Deputy Rock.
Thank you. I do indeed, Count Corley, yes. Thank you very much. Minister, this is an issue I've been raising via parliamentary question for about a year now. Looking around the city, I think both you and I and every urban member of this House would be well aware of the exploding popularity of this form of transport, both in Ireland and indeed across Europe. There's no question that this is the way of the future for sustainable transport. There's no question that this is the way of the future for environmental transport, and there's no question that this is the way of the future for integration with public transport. Accordingly, as Minister, I asked you a parliamentary question in July of 2018, where you said governing legislation is currently in place for electric scooters that can be powered by mechanical or electrical power alone. That parliamentary question and the answer to that parliamentary question has since changed in subsequent posing of the question by other members of the House. It's quite clear, both then in July 2018 and now, Minister, that these vehicles live in a legislative grey area. It's quite clear that when it comes to taxation, these vehicles are impossible to tax, in effect. It's quite clear from talking to members of An Garda Síochána that they are unclear what to do with these vehicles. And it's quite clear that due to the absence of legislation on these vehicles under the Road Traffic Act, that city councils were inevitably and eventually going to have to pose their own views on them. In Dublin City Council this week, I put this topical issue forward last week. Since I put this topical issue forward, Dublin City Council have indeed made their views known, which is to say that they believe that until legislation is put forward, these vehicles should effectively be rendered illegal via bylaw. So, Minister, my question to you is, what is the plan here exactly? I think it was quite foreseeable for a long time now that there was going to be something that would have to be done about this, yet nothing has been done about this. I think it was quite clear that legislation was going to have to be put forward or the road traffic bill amended in order to bring these vehicles into some form of legal area where there would be clear regulations set down in relation to speed, in relation to pedestrian safety, in relation to usage on footpaths, roads or cycle lanes. And none of this has been done, and I think that's regrettable. I think it's regrettable that we're being reactionary in this matter rather than being proactive. There are over 3,000 of these vehicles in use in Dublin right now. That number is growing by the week. We know a number of high street retailers are now selling them out of their shops. So it's no longer a niche minority pursuit. It's growing in popularity and will continue to grow in popularity. So my question for the Minister is, what is the plan in effect? What are the timelines? What kind of surety and certainty can we give to people using these vehicles, and how can we integrate them into a fully functioning transport network where we have increasing numbers of people using bicycles, increasing number of people using buses, increasing numbers from the Kildare members' constituencies using trains? How do we integrate scooters into this mix? We have great big plans with bus connects, Metrolink and so on and so forth, but scooters allow for what we call the last mile of these journeys to be completed, where somebody gets on a high-speed, high-frequency public transport network, but then if they need to get to a particular place, for example, Leinster House, they can take their scooter off the metro and use it to get to the final mile. In my view, and it's always been my view, they should be treated the same as electric bicycles, electric-assisted bicycles. This is how it works in other European countries. That's the direction I think we should be going, but I'd be curious to hear the Minister's thoughts on it on the record. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank Deputy Rock for raising the issue of electrical scooters and providing us with the opportunity to discuss these and similar vehicles. I'm of course aware of the increasing number of e-scooters, electrically powered skateboards and similar small vehicles both on our footpaths and on our roads. I will start by advising you of the current legal situation in relation to such vehicles. The Road Traffic Act 1961 defines a mechanically propelled vehicle as a vehicle intended or adapted for propulsion by mechanical means, including a bicycle or tricycle with an attachment for propelling it by mechanical power, whether or not the attachment is being used. It also includes a vehicle, the means of propulsion of which is electrical or partly electrical and partly mechanical. E-scooters and powered skateboards fall into this category and are therefore considered to be mechanically propelled vehicles. Any users of such vehicles in a public place as defined in the Road Traffic Act 1961, must have insurance, road tax and a driving licence with penalties under road traffic laws, including fixed charge notices, penalty points, fines and possible seizure of the vehicle for not being in compliance with these requirements. As it is currently not possible to tax or insure e-scooters or electric skateboards, they are not considered suitable for use in a public place. Electric bicycles are in a different category to e-scooters. Where a bicycle has an electric motor attached, which may be used as an alternative means of propulsion, the vehicle is defined as a mechanically propelled vehicle under the Road Traffic Acts, whether or not the motor is being used. However, under Article 1H of EU Directive 2002/24/EC, e-bikes are defined as cycles with pedal assistance, which are equipped with an auxiliary electric motor having a maximum continuous rated power of 0.25 kW, of which the output is progressively reduced and finally cut off as the vehicle reaches a speed of 25 km per hour or sooner if the cyclist stops pedalling. Legal advice obtained by the department confirms that as bikes of this type require continuous effort on the part of the cyclist, they are considered to be pedal cycles. In other words, the engine is not the means of propulsion, but an aid to the user. Pedal-assisted cycles with a maximum continuous rated power of more than 0.25 kW and e-bikes that can be exclusively propelled by the motor are classified in the directive as low-performance mopeds, i.e. vehicles with pedals with an auxiliary engine of power not exceeding 1 kW and a maximum design speed not exceeding 25 km per hour. Such vehicles are subject to road traffic legislation, as outlined above, with the user obliged to have tax, insurance and an appropriate driving licence where the vehicle is to be used in a public place. I have requested the RSA, the Road Safety Authority, to research how e-scooters and other such vehicles are regulated in other countries, particularly other member states. I am keen to understand the road safety implications of the use of such vehicles on public roads, especially when interacting with other vehicles. I will make a decision on whether or not to amend existing legislation when I have received the outcome of the authority's research, and not before then. I will need to be satisfied that permitting such vehicles on our roads will not give rise to safety concerns, both for the users themselves and for all other road users, including cyclists, pedestrians and motorists.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Count Corla. I suppose it's better late than never in many respects. I mean, the Road Safety Authority's review could have been commissioned when the first parliamentary questions on this matter were being set down. It was clearly going to be an area that deserved further scrutiny, and clearly based on comparable European countries, it was clearly going to be an area where either legislative scrutiny was needed or legislative change was potentially needed. Accordingly, I welcome the Minister's response, albeit belated as it is. For the attention of the House, of course, it's worth noting that these electrically assisted scooters, the electrically assisted vehicles, do require a manual start, of course. They have to be kick-started by the user. They have to reach a minimum of 7 kilometres an hour under your own propulsion before the electric assist kicks in. Accordingly, this is where the ambiguity exists. Indeed, in discussions with the motor taxation offices, these vehicles can't be taxed. If one wanted to tax them, one couldn't tax them. This is where the ambiguity in the grey area exists. Multiple agencies of the state ultimately have differing views on how these vehicles should be treated. Accordingly, it is necessary to bring about some legal clarity on the matter, in my view, and indeed in the views of officials of the various agencies. That is why, whether it's to legalise them or indeed to explicitly make them unusable, it is necessary, I believe, to bring about legislation. So accordingly, I welcome the Minister's closing point in his statement that the Road Safety Authority will be commissioned to put together a report. I would urge the Minister to ensure the Road Safety Authority do so in short order and quickly. There are many thousands of people using these vehicles, many hundreds more buying these vehicles every week, and accordingly, I do believe that there is an onus on us to bring clarity to this area and an onus on us to make sure as legislators that we legislate accordingly. Thank you very much.
Yeah, as the Deputy says, and I acknowledge that as there are so many people using these particular vehicles, there is a need for speed and to clarify the situation. And I hope that I've helped to do that today. The emergence of these vehicles and other such vehicles is an example of a case where the legislation, while unambiguous as it stands, needs to be reconsidered in light of the new developments which we are speaking about. Any possibility of change in the legislation would have to be considered first and foremost in the light of the safety of those people using these vehicles and, of course, of the wider public. It's clear that there are implications for the use of these vehicles for public safety. Where they are driven on a public road, they're extremely vulnerable. Where driven on a cycle path or pedestrian path, they can pose dangers to legitimate users of those paths. And as the Deputy said, and as I've acknowledged, I think the consideration of the Road Safety Authority is the right place to put it, to see what should be done and what legislative changes are required. And when the authority has concluded its examination and reported on it, I'll consider that legislation and introduce it, if any, as quickly as possible.
Thank you very much, Minister Cowan. Just in closing, I'd like to issue Minister Ross with an invitation to perhaps use one of these vehicles on some of the private space around the House, if he would be so willing.
You might give him a loan of your own. Anyway, let's move on, members. We're getting a little